I've always been big and strong on TRT, but I've always been kind of fat. And I split that into 2 doses, and that's where I stayed. Somewhere in there, I developed the first inkling and thought pattern that I'm a fraud. Guys, my name is Noah. Thank you for checking out this video. I'm gonna take you guys on a pretty long, windy road today. We're gonna talk about my relationship with injecting testosterone. It has been positive, it has been negative, it has been uplifting, it's been very anxiety provoking and unhealthy. And there are some things that I've never had the language for or the capacity to understand about myself and my toxic relationship with injecting testosterone. I haven't been able to understand it till now. I'm currently sitting in my bedroom here at Treehouse Recovery. I'm in the tail end of month 4 of inpatient rehab for alcoholism. We're not going to talk too much about that. It's something I've detailed on this channel at great length, but that's not today's focus. Although the epiphany and some of the emotional struggles and thought struggles I've been working through here in treatment have been around my relationship with testosterone. So right off the bat, I want you to know that if you struggle with addiction, get help. You deserve that help. I know I certainly do, and I think everyone does. If you struggle with mental health issues, depression, anxiety, depersonalization, bipolar, mania, schizophrenia, anything. If you're just not sure what to do with the way you think and feel, get help. You're worthy of that, so am I, we all are. The reason I bring that up in relation to a video talking about testosterone is because that's the reason I started testosterone. I was having mental health problems, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Another reason I'm making this video is because I have been struggling with obsessions, thought spirals, and really aggressive negative emotions surrounding what I'm learning are some cognitive distortions and some warped belief systems, and some sadness and some mourning about an old life and a confused sense of self and identity as pertains to addiction, being on testosterone, among other things. And I want to share openly and candidly with you guys to reach someone out there that can relate. One of the things that I think is important and profoundly useful on this channel is the ability to express myself with honesty and integrity in hopes of essentially finding a me in you, if that makes sense. Finding someone out there who thinks like I do, who worries like I do, who may struggle like I do, who may succeed and find in victories the same ways that I do. I want to relate, I want to connect. Identification on this channel is important, so I want to set the stage for this video because it will be longer with the understanding that I want to identify with whomever I can. And I also very much am looking to learn from you and hear back from you. And I'm going to open up and be vulnerable in a way that is fairly difficult on this particular topic. But I think it's important because if I wasn't doing this, I'd wish that there would be a video out there for me. So let's start with a passive thought about body image. For me, as a little kid, I idolized and worshipped guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Sylvester Stallone, just any muscle-bound guy. I just thought they were amazing. Those were my heroes, and I grew up wanting to look and be like them. And that was the foundation of my image of a man, something that's very common, I imagine, for a lot of guys. And I was perfectly okay with that. It was very exciting. And in high school, I lifted and I worked out and I enjoyed my body image. College years, I worked out a lot and my body responded well. And I was fairly built for a kid, but I enjoyed being strong and I felt good. At that time, I'd had no experience with depression or sadness, depending on how you look at it. I had no understanding of anxiety. I had no understanding of my emotions and how they may or may not be impacting me. I thought I was pretty good. Somewhere after that, drinking really took a big role in my life. I'd always really enjoyed it, but it took a really big role in my life. And then in my early 20s, I started to experience apathy. I started to experience sadness, anxiety, a lack of enjoyment for my life. And I gained a lot of weight, and I kind of got away from training, and my body composition changed, and I got a little bit heavy. And from that point on, from age 21 to 25, I kind of was in shape, out of shape, in shape, out of shape. My journey to look and feel really good was a mess. And it was riddled with endless attempts to control my drinking, fail at that. Try to understand why I had no motivation, try to understand why I felt so sad so often. A lot of confusing things going on there for me. At 25, I checked myself into rehab, came out, and I wasn't successful. I wasn't able to stay sober. I was still dealing with a lot of anxiety, a lot of sadness, and very, very much not aware of what was really going on when it comes to me and my relationship with alcohol and just the disease model of addiction, the brain disease model. Didn't know what was happening, didn't have the capacity to understand, very much left to my own devices. I did what I did. And then I took a Vivitrol shot, and this is where we're gonna get to the testosterone aspect of all this. I took a Vivitrol shot, which for those of you that don't know, it's the brand name Vivitrol for a generic medication called naltrexone. And this was supposed to really, really help me with alcohol cravings. But I had a paradoxical reaction to it, a dangerous, dangerous adverse reaction to it. And it spiraled me into a treatment-resistant depression. I've spoken about this on this channel ad nauseum, and I expect myself to continue to do that one way or another to reach new people that may have gone through a similar thing or are struggling with mental health. And a year and a half into this experience, which I could talk about forever, but I won't. But it was bad. But a year and a half into this treatment-resistant depression with suicidality, anxiety, I was sitting on a couch at my parents' house. I wasn't able to work at the time. I was deeply depersonalized. I had no energy. I was flaccid. I was weak. I was skinny fat, you might call me. I hadn't been able to exercise for a long time. I saw a commercial, one of those anti-aging commercials for men over 40. And the commercial brought out a slew of symptoms and said, men over 40, I think, do you experience loss of energy, loss of joy in your life, libido issues, erectile dysfunction, depression, anxiety, all of these symptoms? And I'm sitting there watching it in just this terribly uncomfortable state. Again, a year and a half into a treatment-resistant depression, thinking I have all of these symptoms. Now, be mindful that at the time, I had been on every psych med, and I say that word every a bit loosely, but I had been on a number of psych meds and mood stabilizers and antipsychotics and other treatment options, trying to figure out why I was so dangerously depressed still after that paradoxical reaction to the Vivitrol injection. That injection was an intramuscular 1-month massive injection that created a blocking effect, I believe, on my opiate receptors, but it was supposed to, as a side effect, off-label use, help me with craving, take away any interest I had in craving, but again, my brain shut down. So I'd been on psych meds, I'd been on mood stabilizers, I'd been on heavy antipsychotics, I'd done RTMS shock therapy, I'd been in psych wards, I was not doing well. So I saw this commercial and I thought to myself, that's me. I have everything that's going on in this video, everything. And so I went to my doctor and I said, is it possible that I have low testosterone? And he said, absolutely not. And he was fairly adamant about that fact. He just didn't think it made sense. So I insisted, and eventually he did draw my blood. And my total testosterone was 155 nanograms per deciliter. At the time, I was told that the average 25-year-old was around 700 nanograms per deciliter. And then my free testosterone, I'm frustrated that I don't have that number here because I've looked for it. It's in some e-file, but my free testosterone was low to the same capacity that my total was low. The free testosterone, for those of you who don't know, that's the bioavailable testosterone. That's the testosterone that we really need to look at and be primarily concerned with when it comes to looking at the diagnosis of hypogonadism, aka low testosterone. So the reference range for your total, it varies from lab to lab. And I've noticed over the years that reference range for average or healthy or normal testosterone has come tighter and smaller and lower, but that reference range is roughly 285 or 315 to 1100, let's say, depending on the lab. And mine was 155 total. So whatever that margin is there, that difference or that ratio, it was very, very similar with my bottomed out free testosterone. The doctor was perplexed, and he didn't really think it was a fair reading. He assumed there was an issue, which is kind of shocking considering I was in such a heinous mental and emotional state, given also the physical aspects of my condition. But we did multiple blood draws that verified the same, minor variations in the numbers, but essentially just extremely low testosterone. And then my symptoms and what I was experiencing mirrored that finding. It made perfect sense. That's when I started my journey with injectable testosterone. That's what brings us to the meat and potatoes of this video. I wanted to give you a setup just to give you an understanding of how I got there. The key takeaway, and we'll circle back around to this, I hope, is that I didn't mean to start testosterone replacement therapy. I didn't start testosterone replacement therapy for motives of being in shape, of being built. I mean, I wanted to feel good and feel healthy. I wanted to have good thoughts about myself. I wanted to be able to work out, of course. I was weak, I was sick, my bones were brittle, I wasn't doing well, but I just didn't start it to gain muscle. I didn't start it so that I could have a nice body, is what I'm trying to say. And at the time, I really did not have a nice body. I was very, very sick. I started because I was suicidally depressed. I was depersonalized, which means I was stuck in a dreamlike state, and I couldn't sleep, and I barely wanted to eat. And I was very, very sick. So they started me on testosterone replacement therapy, but it was a primary care doc started me. He was blown away by my numbers because he had me come in different times of day, different days, usually morning though was the most accurate. And so he just started me on a whopping dose of testosterone, 400 milligrams, which I didn't know was a whopping dose at the time, but it is. 400 milligrams every 2 weeks. Now there are a few things wrong with that. I'm not sure I'm gonna dive into that, but it meant, in effect, that my testosterone went from being non-existent to being way super physiological. Taking that much all at once meant that I was blowing I don't know what the blood work would have revealed there, but like let's say within a few days of testosterone cypionate, which is what I started, but it went way, way high. And then it crashed, and then it went high, and then it crashed based on the half-life of testosterone cypionate. But it was a start, and I was grateful for the start because I was just so hopeless, and I was looking for hope, and I finally had my first shred of hope that maybe I wasn't going to die. Maybe there was hope that I could live. And so we started my journey there, and the mental health aspects of this took a while to take hold. The first thing I noticed when I started testosterone was that my appetite came back. I was like hungry for the first time in what felt like forever. If you guys have ever experienced depression, clinical black tar depression, hours feel like days, days feel like weeks, weeks feel like months, months feel like years. You get what I'm trying to say. Time moves slow when you're that uncomfortable. So I hadn't experienced what I would now say is just voracious hunger and appetite for a long time. So I ate a lot of food when I first started my testosterone. About 6 weeks in is when I first started to think that I was mentally doing better. That's about how long it took. Other than that, I noticed that my appetite went up and my energy level went up. And it took about that much time to also realize that I was growing. I was getting bigger for the first time in forever. Mind you that I hadn't really been working out prior to that. But once I started, I wanted to try to save my own life again. And I wanted to participate again. I now thought there was a reason to try. So I started exercising and lifting weights, much like I had in the earlier parts of my life. And a lot of that weight was muscle. Nothing could have prepared me for what that created inside me in terms of a thought process and feeling. And as my mental health started improving, and at that dose, 400 every 2 weeks, which we did for about a month, I think, I had a very anabolic response, and my muscles started building, and I got strong, and I felt good. It felt good to be strong and to think I had any control over anything after feeling so helpless and lost. They eventually moved my dosage from 400 every 2 to 200 every 1. Now 200, in my opinion, this is very personal, I still think is entirely too much for the average guy on testosterone. This is all independent though and individual. Some guys may respond well to that, but for me, knowing what I know now, it was just too much. I was converting too much of it into estrogen. They weren't monitoring my blood work in a way that I thought was appropriate and healthy. I had a GP who didn't really know what he was doing, but I was on 200 and I got a massive acne issue. My skin got oily, I got very puffy, I got very fat, and I got very strong. And I stayed like that for a long time. I'd say at least a year or two, I'm assuming, trying to remember, on 200 every week. Mental health got okay. I would say that it got good enough. It got good enough. I wasn't deeply suicidal anymore, but I wasn't doing great. I got fat on TRT and deeply unhealthy in that way. Binge eating all the time. I got up to 247 pounds. And I lifted a lot of weights, a lot of just heavy bench press. But I started to develop a new identity. I started posting on this channel. I became unaware that I was now attaching my whole world and my whole identity around this new thing, Noah on testosterone replacement therapy. I hadn't had a lot of education on TRT at the time. I didn't really know what was happening to my body. I knew I had bad acne and that my face was puffy, but my muscles were getting bigger. I was feeling stronger, and I felt powerful and more in control and not so scared and lonely and desperate like I once was. So let's say that that's the pivotal point of me being fat and unhealthy on testosterone, but strong. Definitely built a lot of muscle. Somewhere in there, I changed doctors. I found someone who was a lot more mindful of my blood work, who wanted to make sure that I was using my testosterone in a really healthy way. So my dosage went from 200 a week, and we bumped me down to like 160. And that made me nervous. And there was a red flag there. It made me nervous to lower because I was afraid of losing what I had. I've learned since being here working with therapists that there was some emotional and mental attachment to the testosterone. I associated it with the chance at a new life, but there's also an unhealthy attachment to building muscle and being bigger on testosterone. I didn't want to not be big, no. I like being big and strong. I like feeling powerful. And as a man who had so many insecurities and was struggling in so many other ways. But we lowered me to 160, and my blood work got better. I don't have those numbers for you right now. I'm just not that organized, and I don't care to be at this moment. But my doctor, Dr. Zelfin at the time, had seen that my total and my free was just too high on 200. So we lowered me to 160, eventually lowered me to 140, and I started to actually feel better. But during this time, my alcoholism was growing. The disease of addiction was alive and well in me, and I was either sober or a drunk, trying to figure out how to do both while being on testosterone, while just navigating my trauma from the Vivitrol and a lot of other things. So I was kind of starting my journey of learning how to be healthy, learning how to eat differently, and learning how to take better care of myself, train more with more smarts. I also found CrossFit somewhere around this time as well. My journey to CrossFit started in 2016, I believe. And that's the first time I ever started looking at diet. That's the first time I ever started looking and learning about health and wellness and lifestyle factors and fasting. And that's the first time I had got my testosterone dialed into about 140. And so my doctor wanted me to go down to 120 and maybe 100. That's when I couldn't pretend anymore that I was afraid to not have muscle, to not be strong, to not be big. No. That's when I started lying. When it came to getting from 140 down to, let's say, 100, I fabricated and freaked out. I couldn't go down. I didn't want to. I didn't want to lose what I had, and I'd clearly become so identified with it. And it was such a huge propping. It propped me up, my personality. It propped up my sense of well-being. It propped up my identity. So I didn't know who I would be if I wasn't big. No. Who would I be if I wasn't pretty strong and didn't have some muscles? I had such an unhealthy coping mechanism for life and for my sense of self, which is one of the main things we're working on here, is that just being a part of my wellness, but not being my whole identity. When I was supposed to go down to 100 or 120, that's when I lied. And I said, I don't feel good on this dose. I need to go back to 140, otherwise I won't feel good. And I don't even know if I wouldn't have felt good. I know that it was rooted in fear, insecurity, vanity, who knows, all those things. But that's when what's the expression, the cat was out of the bag. That's when it's like, dude, this isn't about your mental and emotional health anymore. This isn't about the healthy benefits of TRT. This is now stemmed into you want to have your muscles, and you're afraid that if you don't have that, what will you be and what will you have? That's when something got weird. 140, which is my current dose right now. And I split that into 2 doses, and that's where I stayed. And that's where I've stayed this whole time. Now, I got sober at one point, and I achieved a phenomenal physique. It was the first time on TRT that I'd ever been mentally sound enough, emotionally sound enough, and then sober long enough to implement everything I was learning about fasting, everything I was learning about lifestyle and mindfulness and wellness, everything I was learning about recovery and trying to be a better person and live to a higher standard. To live according to my new values. This was back in 2019, I believe, that I really put it all together. And my body got, in my opinion, just insane. I'd always been big and strong on TRT, but I'd always been kind of fat. So I finally figured that out when I was sober for about a year, and I got really dialed in. And I started to get a lot of comments. People thought maybe I was abusing my TRT or I was running other drugs, which I never did. And I was kind of shocked. I was like, man, I didn't realize I could look this way. And I think somewhere in there, my association got unhealthy. It made me even more like, somewhere in there, I developed the first inkling and thought pattern that I'm a fraud. I'm a fraud. I'm on 140 milligrams of testosterone cypionate a week. I train CrossFit 5 or 6 days a week. I fast. I focus on my sleep. I eat whole foods. I eat clean. I got all lean and shredded, and I tried to enjoy it, and I tried to take credit for it, so to speak, and I tried to just be at peace with it. But I clearly had become so far removed from the reason I started and the desperately sad circumstances that led me to it. So this guy who's just insecure to not have muscles. So I got to walk around in that body and struggle to identify with it as mine. And then I went back to drinking, and my relationship with testosterone got even more toxic, in the sense that as a guy on TRT, I think I had taken things I've heard in the media and my own insecurities and comments I've seen online very personal. Thinking about, like, even in CrossFit, right, which is the sport I love. At the CrossFit Games, which is essentially like the championship of CrossFit, there's this guy named Ricky Gerard who did really well, took 3rd place, but was busted for PEDs, and the whole online community shunned him in terms of the testosterone community. And so I think I personalized that a little bit. And so I started to think to myself every time I would compete in CrossFit that I was a cheater.
Noah's in 2nd place right now. He's going to try to steal the lead today. He will. Oh, declaration. Oh, you better watch your back, Martin.
We'll see.
Just talking smack against my greatest competitor here.
That it wasn't fair, that I had an advantage. And so every compliment I got, I felt I had a negative feeling associated with it, negative thoughts. Anytime people would compliment my body, I had negative thoughts. But I always felt very bad for it and very much like a fraud. And like I wasn't worthy of the body that I had worked hard for. I wasn't worthy of the athletic achievements. And every time I'd win a workout, because CrossFit, there's a lot of that, I just felt like I didn't deserve it. So I should be going heavier than everyone. I should be finishing faster. I just developed this really negative association with it. I created a villain mindset. Created a villain mindset. So I came into treatment, and part of my treatment here, it's very physically based. 5 days a week, we're essentially doing CrossFit. It's called ESM, exercitium, some meta modella. Exercise as a pathway to healing, I believe is what it means. And we talk a lot about attitude and objectives and mindsets. And then we train, which is essentially CrossFit. It didn't take long for the staff here to realize that this guy has an unhealthy relationship with that exercise, and he has an unhealthy body image. I didn't know what was going on or what to make of it, but I didn't realize what was happening to me. But they quickly realized it for me, and we talked about it, and it became a huge point of my therapy, is that, that I have to change my relationship with my body, and I have to work on my mindset and my attitude about health and wellness, and I have to address these core issues that are making me feel so unworthy and so insecure. And one of the things that came up was that I was ashamed of being on testosterone. I wished that I wasn't. Talking to my counselors, like, I don't want to be on TRT anymore. I just want to be a natural like everyone else. Like, I don't want this to be my story. And really mourning the fact that I lost the opportunity a long time ago to be natural. And I've always thought being natural just sounded so good, and it was so cool to be natural. And what body could I achieve naturally? What physical experiences, and how good could I get at CrossFit naturally? I'll never know, and it makes me feel anxious, and it has deeply overwhelmed me and made me feel horribly sad and insecure. Just mourning the loss of that life, of that opportunity. And online, people just love natties, and people make fun of and question half natties, right? Or people on gear. And where is the line drawn? Where does testosterone start and Noah begin? How could I ever feel good about anything I ever do? Because I'll never know what's really me and what's the testosterone. I think about it on runs. I think about it on lifts. I think about it doing CrossFit workouts. Is this me? Is this my testosterone? I just get so in my head. And I just want to feel good about myself. I want to feel proud of myself, and I want to feel okay. That's the part that I want to say. I need to make sure I say that. And I've learned here that it wasn't my fault that I ended up on T, and it's a great thing, and I'm worthy of it, and thank God for it. It's the reason maybe the reason I'm still alive and I didn't commit suicide. So I think there's a lot of things going on that keep me from always maintaining a reality-based, logical, and healthy perspective on my story, and forgiving myself and being at peace and loving my story and all that. So what was starting to happen to me in CrossFit, back in my addiction, was happening to me now in rehab, trying to get sober, which is that if there was a workout that was a competition style workout, I thought I had to win, because if I didn't win, what would that say about me, considering I'm optimized? And at the time I thought my numbers must be crazy. We got that sorted, and I'll share that here, but I couldn't feel good about performing well. I couldn't take credit or feel good about the way my body looked because I thought I was cheating. I completely detached from the reality of my diagnosis and what happened to me, that this was a life-saving treatment option for me. And so we started talking about it, and I spent a couple months working on this and it getting better. And it became pervasive and insidious how often my brain would go to negative thought spirals about myself. I'd look in the mirror and see my body and think like, ugh, this isn't yours, or you shouldn't be proud of this. Or every time someone would compliment me on my muscles or my pecs or my performance, I would deep down, I'd shudder. And I was like, dang, I started becoming mindful of that. I'm like, man, I can't seem to cut myself any slack. And then sometimes I get a hold of it, sometimes I wouldn't. 2 months went by, and I started to learn to love myself and accept my story. We did blood work here. I inject my testosterone 70 milligrams on Sunday, 70 milligrams on Wednesday. And I injected on a Sunday, and on a Wednesday morning, we did my blood draw, and it came back 800 for total and like 150 for free, high end of the optimal normal range. I wonder what the levels do right after I pin for a day or two, but I'd read that it's like usually 48 hours after that it spikes. But essentially was high normal, and I imagine I go a little bit over to what would be the old normal range. So I found out my blood work wasn't as high as I thought. But the point is, all of this is to say, because now I'm just letting you know my crazy on how my brain works. I cannot, at the moment, stop this thought spiral that I'm cheating. I can't stop this thought spiral that I don't deserve this physique or my CrossFit abilities. Like I'm doing something wrong, and it makes me feel hopeless, and it makes me feel sad. And my counselors are saying, yeah, this is a thought spiral that will lead you back to drinking. And it all comes down to there being something bad or wrong about me. And we've learned a lot about this with childhood trauma, with the way I attach to my parental figures, with unhealthy relationship styles, and just with the nature of being an alcoholic, the way my brain is wired. We made sense of a lot of this, but it's been very difficult. And highly uncomfortable, and kind of sad that I've struggled so much to love myself and accept myself. And I think back on me in my addiction, I was just scared, and I was just compensating, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who I'd be without my TRT. Would I just get sick again? Would I not be able to train? Damned if I do, damned if I don't. And so what I would like, for those of you that are still here, because this has gone long, I would like you guys to share your experience and your thoughts on this. If you're a man on TRT, have you at all questioned the validity of your TRT? Have you felt ashamed? Have you felt embarrassed? Have you felt not worthy? Have you felt like you're a cheater or a fraud? And for me as a CrossFit competitor, have you thought that I have an advantage, and struggled with the sense that you're not being moral? Because a lot of the stuff I know is based in irrational. It's irrational. I work with some really talented therapists, and we break it all down. And I think my thought process is irrational in almost every way. The only thing I know is true is that with optimized hormones, I don't have to worry about my testosterone crashing. That's for sure. And that's good for holding muscle, particularly when you get lean. So I know there's some advantage there. But this competing thing, this idea of advantage is concerning. And that's what concerns the staff here. Who am I competing against, and who am I comparing myself to, and who am I afraid will judge me, and why am I judging myself? And we did decide that since I had gotten a little sneaky and a little unhealthy with my attitude, mindset, and my behavior around my addiction and my TRT, that's where the shame started to really come in. But now that I'm sober, now that I have a very clear-cut set of boundaries and a clear-cut set of values, and an expectation of myself for congruency in behavior, values, morals, what do I do with this leftover shame? What do I do with this leftover insecurity? How do I love myself, love the body I'm in, give myself credit where credit's due, but just turn it all over to hey, you were sick, you're on a therapy that's helping you stay alive. I very much don't know if I'd be alive if I hadn't identified the issue. But I do know that after making a ton of progress and then moving into a transition phase here at treatment, I've gone back into training CrossFit with my old community, wonderful community, gone back to coaching, gotten back in that world, and my spirals and my obsession and my sense of guilt and my inability to take a compliment deep down and not feel guilty or like I'm lying or cheating or fraud, it's ramped back up. So I need help, and I also need a guy, and I'm getting help, and I'm working on this, but I also need to make a video in case there's one guy like me who's experienced any of this stuff, who struggled with full acceptance of himself, with self-love, who struggle with TRT and body image, because there are men out there that have a really healthy perspective on this, and I want to hear from them on how they've reframed and or how they framed their life on TRT to just feel empowered and feel good, because the logical, true, thoughtful, responsible, loving, accepting version of me knows I'm okay, knows that I'm not doing anything wrong, I'm not trying to make it to the Olympics. I know that I can't reality test or prove to what effect having my hormones optimized for my TRT is making me a better athlete than someone. But I ultimately don't think it matters. And I think that's where I need to get to, is like, why does this matter to me so much, and why can't I let it go? Is it just being warped in a body-centric society? Is it just, what's that all about? And I want to look into it, but I want to work through it. Counselors think I'll drink over something like this eventually if I don't get it under control. I just want to love myself and be totally at peace with myself. When I was sick and pre-testosterone, pre-mental breakdown, I didn't like myself, right? And I hated the way I looked and felt. I got better, and I found a way not to like myself there too. One way or another, I find a way to dislike myself and or at least to not accept myself or think there's something wrong about me. So I got to work on that and figure that out. It's very exhausting. My thought spirals get so insane. I literally wake up and think you have an advantage. It's the first thing I think. Yeah. That's what's going on with me. And this all is in the midst of a lot of great growth and a lot of great progress. It's only been like a 3 or 4 week regression here into these old thought spirals, but it's very real. It impacts me very much. I hope you guys are doing well. I am grateful for you. I appreciate you very much, and I thank you for participating in the comments below. If you made it this far, first of all, holy hell. But second of all, go ahead and put in the comments below, along with hopefully other stuff that you're going to share, because I can't wait to hear from you and hear about your story and just learn from you, or get your feedback, whatever you want to offer. But go ahead and put in the comments below, banger, B-A-N-G-E-R, banger. Banger, that means you made it this long. And you're a real badass for doing that. Because most people don't have that much time to give. So thank you. I'm having thoughts like right now, like that didn't come out the way I wanted it to, and I wish it were different, and slight thoughts of insecurity about how I'm coming across. But that's probably good as well. I've had moments where I thought I had it. I've had moments where I thought total love and total self-acceptance, I had it. And being more of in a space of just extreme gratitude that there was even a treatment available for a guy who's as sick as I was, and just being like, yeah, whatever body I get is a gift from God, it's a bonus. Whatever athletic achievements I'm able to experience, just a bonus, just a gift from God. The real point is I'm not suicidal anymore. I'm not dangerously depressed, you know. I get to a good mind space like that, but then I lose it, and it hurts sometimes. So there's got to be other men on hormones or have taken steroids who have dealt with these sort of body image issues. How do you get a really healthy body image issue? Or how do you how do you get a really healthy body image? That's what I want. Guy or gal, I want to hear from you. And again, I really do appreciate you. I'll see you guys in the next video.